I never imagined I would be the type of person who ruins my own marriage in front of an audience. Yet here I am, typing these words while recalling every humiliating detail. This is a throwaway account because some parts of this confession are so shameful that I can't bear to have them traced back to my real profile. But I have to tell it, even if only to strangers, because I need to face the truth. I used to joke that my husband was weak. It started out as playful teasing, at least that's what I told myself. But over time, it became a habit, and then a weapon. Friends would gather around, we'd have a few drinks, and I'd casually mention that he couldn't open a jar of pickles or that he'd flinch at loud noises. People would laugh and I'd feel a perverse thrill. He would sit quietly, forcing a half smile to keep the peace. That changed the night I truly went too far. We were at a friend's party. Actually, the friend in question is Mike, someone my husband James has known since college. The house was loud with conversation and music, and I felt the same old rush, people looking at me, waiting for me to say something entertaining. When the discussion turned to personal relationships, someone asked, "Would your partner protect you in a dark alley?" Almost reflexively, I snorted and replied, "James wouldn't protect me from a paper cut." A hush fell around us, which might have warned me to stop, but I didn't. I kept going. He can't open jars. He doesn't exercise. We'd be helpless if a random thief showed up. And then I tapped his arm lightly and said, "Look at these arms. They're like a teenager's." Laughter rippled. Some folks giggled, some looked uneasy, but the main point is, they laughed. He stood up, leaving behind a half-empty glass of soda. I figured he was going to the restroom or outside for air, but minutes passed, and he didn't return. People around me shifted uncomfortably. Mike quietly muttered, "That was kinda rough," and I felt my stomach twist. After another 5 minutes, I got up to check on him. By then, I discovered he had left the party entirely. Gone. No text, no phone call. A friend offered me a ride home, and I accepted. During the drive, I kept defending myself. It's just jokes. Everyone teases their partner from time to time, right? My friend, someone who'd known me as long as James had, just sighed and said, "Sometimes it's not that funny." That's when my anger flared. What did they know about our dynamic? When I got home, James was in bed, face turned to the wall. I confronted him the next morning. "You embarrassed me by leaving," I said. "Who does that? Just walks out on their wife at a party?" He stared at me quietly. Then he said, "I can't take this anymore." That was the first time the words left his mouth with such finality. I scoffed, telling him he was being overly dramatic, that it was just a joke. He set his coffee mug down, slowly, as if to steady himself, and replied, "It's never just a joke with you. I feel worthless around you. You put me down in front of everyone." I said something like, "Well, maybe if you showed more strength, I wouldn't have to do that." As soon as it flew out of my mouth, the cruelty of the comment hit me, but I wouldn't admit it. Instead, I rolled my eyes. He just pressed his lips together, nodded once, then walked away. Usually he would mutter a half-hearted apology or do something to smooth things over, but not this time. That night, he slept in the guest room. I tried to bang on the door, telling him he was being immature, that we could talk it out. He stayed silent. Eventually, I gave up and went to our bedroom alone, seething with frustration. The next morning, he was up before me, quietly preparing breakfast. When I came into the kitchen, I saw 2 plates. One was already empty. He'd finished his food. He was cleaning up. I said something snippy like, "Oh, so you're making breakfast for yourself now, instead of waiting for me." He turned to face me, eyes shadowed with a tiredness I had never really noticed. Then he said, "Wanda, please sit." His voice was low, but I heard the edge there. I sat. I refused to look at him. He said, "I've made a decision." I exhaled. "What is it now?" I was expecting something like, "I need a break," or "I want to see a counselor." Instead, his statement dropped like a guillotine blade. "I want a divorce." It was one of those surreal moments. The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. My immediate reaction was anger. "You're out of your mind," I said. "We're not divorcing." He was calm. "I'm serious. I'm done. I can't live like this anymore." I stormed off. I locked myself in the bathroom, turned on the shower, and cried because I couldn't understand how my husband had gone from silent acceptance to wanting a divorce in just 2 days. But had it been 2 days? Or had it been years of little humiliations, year after year, until something inside him snapped? In the weeks that followed, he kept his distance. He moved most of his things into the guest room. Our conversations were minimal. Anytime I brought up anything practical, like grocery shopping or a phone bill, he'd answer politely but remain emotionally disengaged. I tried a grand gesture by cooking a big fancy meal and inviting him to sit down with me. He said, "Thank you," took a few bites, then quietly left for a walk. Friends noticed the shift. A few of them, mostly my acquaintances, whispered to me that James seemed distant, that maybe I should try apologizing in a heartfelt manner. I bristled. I apologized, I lied. In truth, I had never looked him in the eyes and said sorry. Not sincerely. It was more like, "I'm sorry you got upset." We all know that isn't the same. At some point, I got the bright idea to pretend to go along with counseling. I told James we should see a marriage therapist. He looked at me skeptically. "Are you actually willing to do that?" I nodded, plastering on a serious face. We found a local counselor, but I conveniently delayed scheduling. Then I pretended they were all booked out for months. I guess I hoped he'd forget or back off from the divorce idea. He wasn't fooled. One evening, he came home and said, "So I called the counselor. They have availability next week." My face froze. I tried to lie my way out of it by saying, "Oh, I must have called a different one." He just shook his head. No more words. He simply pulled out a large folder from his bag and handed me a separation agreement he'd drafted with an attorney friend. All of it was spelled out. The house, the finances, everything. I lost it. "You planned this behind my back? You're deliberately humiliating me." He stared at the floor, his voice subdued. "I'm only doing what's necessary. You never took me seriously when I tried to talk about how much you hurt me." I shot back. "All couples tease each other. That's normal. You're the one overreacting." He said, "When it's destructive, it's not normal. Look, I don't want to fight anymore. I'm moving out." The morning after James left, the house felt colder than usual. The air had weight, like it was mourning something I refused to admit was already dead. His keys weren't on the hook. His coat, gone. Shoes, too. And the side of the bed where he used to sleep looked untouched, like no one had ever belonged there. I made coffee out of habit. Didn't even realize I was crying until I saw a tear plop into my mug. I wiped it away, grabbed my phone, and started texting him. "Where are you? We need to talk. You can't just leave like that. This is childish." No reply. I called. Straight to voicemail. I called again. Nothing. I started pacing, fingers trembling around the phone. My mind raced through all the possibilities. Maybe he was with Mike. Maybe he'd gone to a hotel. Maybe this was all just some twisted way of making me feel guilty. "Fine," I muttered to myself. "Two can play at that game." I opened Instagram, searching for any sign of him. Nothing on his feed. Nothing on his stories. My hands moved faster now. Twitter, Facebook, even LinkedIn. I don't know what I was expecting, but it wasn't that. There it was. A video. Posted by one of Mike's friends. I recognized the living room instantly. The same lamp, the same worn-out rug with the red wine stain we once laughed about. The thumbnail showed me laughing, mid-sentence, mouth wide open. The caption read, "When someone humiliates their partner for laughs." My stomach dropped before I even hit play. The clip was only a minute and a half, but in that short time, the camera had caught everything. The smug grin on my face, the way I nudged James and said, "Come on, show him your arms. Guys, tell me these don't look like a kid's." Laughter. So much laughter. but not from him. He just sat there, his eyes fixed on the floor, jaw clenched, his hands gripping the beer bottle like it was the only thing anchoring him. And then he stood up. No words, no scene. Just stood, grabbed his coat, and left. The video ended with someone saying off camera, "Dude, where's he going?" Followed by a chuckle. I stared at the screen, numb. Then, slowly, I scrolled down to the comments. This is hard to watch. Why do people think this kind of behavior is okay? You can see the pain in his eyes. Emotional abuse is real, even when it comes with a smile. Then, is this Wanda from Graybridge PR? OMG, that's her. She gave a workshop at my college last year. How can someone talk about emotional intelligence and treat their husband like that? I dropped the phone. The sound of it hitting the hardwood startled me more than the words ever could. I scrambled to pick it up, as if touching it would undo what I had just seen. My heart pounded. My palms were slick. My mouth went dry. "Okay," I whispered. "Okay, this is just a bunch of strangers. They don't know the full story." But deep down, I knew they didn't need the full story. They'd seen enough. Within hours, the video spread like spilled ink. 15,000 views by nightfall. By morning, over 50. Every scroll brought fresh waves of shame. People tagged James, asked if he was okay, if he needed support. No one blamed him. Not one person questioned his silence. He never liked posting online, said it felt performative. But now, ironically, his silence spoke louder than anything I could have ever said in my defense. And me? I was the villain in someone else's story. A living warning sign. A lesson. I wanted to scream, to explain, to cry that it was just a joke, that we both used to tease each other. But even I didn't believe that anymore. That night, I locked every window, turned off every light, and lay in bed staring at the ceiling while the world outside kept watching, judging, sharing. I was no longer the one controlling the narrative, and for the first time, I couldn't find a single clever line to save myself. I tried to do damage control, messaging the original poster, demanding they remove the video. They refused. "You humiliated him in front of us all," they wrote back. "The world deserves to know what emotional abuse looks like." My boss, who had quietly prided themselves on a family-friendly brand, called me into the office. "We can't have this negative publicity," they said. "This is trending in a direction that makes us look complicit. I'm sorry, but we have to let you go." That was it. Fired because I'd made a spectacle of my husband. The severance package was minimal. Clients started pulling out of smaller side gigs I had. In less than a month, my life disintegrated. Meanwhile, James was nowhere to be seen. He was staying with a friend, or so I heard, but he never came home. One rainy afternoon, I was collecting the last of my personal belongings from the office. My phone rang from a number I didn't recognize. The voice was calm, measured, and oddly confident. It was James. "I need to stop by the house," he said. "Can we talk for a few minutes?" Despite everything, my heart pounded. Maybe he wanted to reconcile. Maybe I could show I'd changed. He arrived looking tired but resolute. We sat in the kitchen with a pot of tea. He only poured a half cup for himself, which told me he didn't plan to stay long. He set a few documents on the table. "The bank accounts can be split 50-50, he said. "I'd like to keep the condo we bought, but I'm open to negotiation if you want to sell and each buy smaller places." I realized then that he'd truly made up his mind. I tried a last-ditch argument, telling him we had too many good years to throw away. He answered quietly, "Those years never felt good to me. I was always looking over my shoulder, afraid of your next joke." Something snapped inside me. "You're so dramatic," I said, voice cracking. "You can't possibly do better on your own." He exhaled slowly, like he was letting out all the frustration from decades of feeling powerless. He said, I've been writing. You never noticed, but I wrote short stories, little essays, reflections on relationships. One day I want to publish them. A hint of pride flickered in his eyes. Your harshness gave me a lot of material. I blinked. That was news to me. All these years I thought... I started, but he interrupted. You thought I was just your passive punching bag, but I was processing everything. I decided that once I left, I'd explore writing more. My friend's an editor, actually. He gave a small shrug. I guess I just wanted to tell you that we need to finalize the divorce soon, because I'm going to start a new job. Maybe even release a little memoir or a book. He left me there, stunned and speechless. I had never imagined he was secretly forging a new path for himself. Weeks turned into months. The divorce hearing was relatively quick since neither of us had children or complicated assets aside from the condo. We ended up selling it. I tried to push for more than half the money, but my attorney cautioned me that, with the viral video of emotional abuse floating around, a courtroom battle might not go well for me. So I accepted a smaller portion. I had nowhere special to go, so I moved into a small rental. Everything felt so quiet and lifeless. That's when I saw a post from an acquaintance. Local writer's candid, raw look at toxic relationships climbs bestseller lists. Under it was an author photo. James. He looked more composed, more sure of himself than I'd ever seen. The article mentioned his name repeatedly, praising his insights into emotional abuse. The text described real stories about feeling diminished by a partner's relentless teasing and shame. The excerpt included lines about how she turned me into a punchline, and the more she laughed, the more I shrank. My heart pounded. Everyone would know it was me. My phone started buzzing that evening with messages from old friends. Some expressed shock at the revelations in James's writing. Others told me I should be ashamed. The worst part was, I couldn't defend myself. The evidence was out there. That short video from the party had already painted me in a terrible light. Now, James's book gave words and a first-person perspective to that dynamic. People read it and connected with him. He was hailed as a voice for those who silently endure emotional cruelty. And I, whether named or unnamed, emerged as the living embodiment of that cruelty. Job interviews started falling flat as well. Hiring managers recognized me from that viral video or from rumors about James's book. They always wore polite smiles that never reached their eyes, then told me they'd call me back. They never did. My severance ran out, and my savings were meager. It was all so surreal. I had once believed I was the strong one in the marriage. Now I was the one unraveling. I had a meltdown a few months later, overcame that crisis with some therapy sessions, but it was all a huge blow. I discovered from social media that James was seeing someone new. She was everything I wasn't. Encouraging, sweet, thoughtful. She posted about him affectionately, congratulating him on his successful second book. My blood boiled, but I forced myself not to lash out in the comments. Instead, I convinced myself that she'd never last. Or that maybe once the excitement died down, James would realize he still cared about me. That delusion persisted until I spotted a photo, a new post from James's page. He stood with that woman, both of them glowing, her hand resting gently on her abdomen. There was a caption about a baby on the way. I read it 3 times, numb. That was it. The final blow. The family he was building now was something he'd once hinted he wanted with me, but I was always too busy controlling him to pay attention. They looked so genuinely happy. And I realized, with a jolt of alarm, that he had truly moved on. One evening, while I scrolled aimlessly, I stumbled on a newly uploaded video. James delivering a TEDx talk. The title had something to do with reclaiming your self-worth. Intrigued and anxious, I clicked. The frame opened on him stepping onto a small stage, wearing a crisp shirt, no longer that timid posture I remembered. The lighting was bright, and he seemed to fill the space with quiet confidence. He began by describing a situation. I knew someone, he said, who felt smaller each time a joke was made at his expense. But he loved the person telling those jokes, so he thought it was normal. He believed it was a sign of affection, until it sank his self-esteem. My eyes stung, but I kept watching. James never mentioned my name, or even gave specifics, yet I recognized all of it. He talked about how it took him years to break free from an unhealthy dynamic. Then he found a creative outlet for his thoughts, writing, while living with that quiet pain. He concluded, "We can't control how others treat us, but we can control when to walk away. And once we do, there's room for something new, something honest." Applause erupted. I stared at my laptop screen, alone in a tiny apartment that smelled faintly of burnt coffee. Hot tears slid down my cheeks. For the first time, it wasn't anger or bitterness. It was shame. Shame that I spent years ignoring the impact of my words. Shame that I'd lost everything dear to me because of my cruel need to feel superior. Shame that I had forced him to that point. Yes, I'd been humiliated publicly by that viral video, by the job loss, by his new writing career that exposed me as a cautionary tale. But none of that stung as deeply as hearing his calm, measured reflection. He had no intention of publicly bashing me. Instead, he was quietly moving forward, reshaping his life for the better. Meanwhile, I was stuck in this cycle of regret. I tried to disappear from social media for a while. The occasional old friend or coworker reached out to ask if I was okay, which I found humiliating in its own right. I avoided direct confrontation, claiming I was focusing on new opportunities. The truth was, I'd never felt more alone. Eventually, I found a small administrative job through a friend's distant contact, someone who didn't connect me to the viral fiasco. It paid modestly, but at least it covered rent and therapy sessions. I was in a group therapy program that helped me see the patterns behind my behavior. It wasn't an overnight transformation, but with each meeting, I learned more about the damage I'd caused and the insecurities inside me that needed healing. One day, in group therapy, a counselor posed a question. If you had a magic wand and could remove one moment from your life, which would it be? People mentioned heartbreaks or tragedies. My mind went straight to that party, standing in a circle, mocking my own husband. I'd erase the moment I lost all sense of compassion, I finally said. I'd erase the moment I decided humiliating someone was entertaining. Fellow participants nodded sympathetically. One told me, "It's not too late to be better." Another asked if I'd ever apologized sincerely to James. I realized with a heart-sinking jolt that I never had. Months later, around the time James and his new partner were preparing for their baby's arrival, I decided to reach out. My therapist agreed it could bring closure. I typed a long message on my phone, deleted it, retyped it. I didn't want him back in the romantic sense. Well, a small part of me did, but I knew that was unrealistic. I just needed to express remorse. Hello. I never truly said I'm sorry for all the pain I caused. I see so clearly now how cruel and belittling I was. There are no excuses. I hope life brings you happiness, and I want you to know that I'm working on myself. I stared at the screen for a while, then tapped send. The next day, I found a single short reply in my inbox. Thank you for saying that. I'm glad you're working on yourself. I wish you well. No bitterness, no invitation to talk further, just a gentle closure. And for the first time in a very long while, I felt something like genuine peace. He was done, and I deserved that boundary. Our story had ended, and he was beginning a new chapter, one that included fatherhood, a thriving writing career, and a stable partnership built on respect. So here I am, sharing this in the hope that others might recognize the lines we cross when we treat our loved ones like comedic fodder. Some jokes land harmlessly, yes, but repeated humiliations can corrode the soul of another human being. I learned that lesson too late. And if there is justice, it's that I faced public exposure, lost my job, and ended up in a lonely apartment. It's that I watched my ex-husband stand confidently on a TEDx stage, presenting everything he learned about emotional abuse and the power of escaping it. It's that the world stood with him, not me. And for once, the crowd laughed at me, not with me. Yet, in that humiliating downfall, I found a path to be a better person. I won't say everything is perfect now. I have regrets that will stay with me for the rest of my life. But I'm working at a modest new job, living quietly, trying to cultivate genuine kindness. Because after losing someone as good as James, I realized kindness is not a weakness. Genuine kindness is the strongest bond of all. I used to call him weak, but in the end, he was the one who stood tall. His new family will soon welcome a child into the world, a child who will never hear their father mocked at the dinner table. And I will watch from a distance, hopefully as a better human than I was before. That might be my only redemption. The thought that I'm no longer blind to my mistakes. I see them. I own them. And I'm trying to move forward with a little more empathy than I had yesterday. If you've made it this far, maybe you're wondering what the moral is. All I can offer is that cruelty, even in small jabs, eventually leads to heartbreak. It's so easy to think it's harmless, until the one you belittle quietly stands up and leaves you behind, taking with them the dignity you never cared to give. I hope someone out there reads this and chooses kindness over that bitter impulse to make a loved one the butt of a joke. I hope you learn from my mistake so that you don't end up like me, writing confessions to strangers on the internet, wishing you'd realize sooner how words can wound and how they can also heal if you let them.